Hey, what's going on guys? You're watching Pocketable Tech, and today we're taking a look at the Polaroid Cube Plus. The Cube Plus is a follow-up to last year's model, the Polaroid Cube. In a video, I compared it to the more costly GoPro Hero for a session, and was surprised to find that the $99 Polaroid Cube stood up very well next to the GoPro Session, which at the time was priced at $399. And if you want to check out that full video, I linked it below in the description, or you could just click the link at the top right corner of this video. Now, here we are today, and Polaroid just released their updated action cam called the Polaroid Cube Plus. The price has slightly increased from $100 to $150, which, when put into context, is still half the price of the GoPro Session. So, what are you getting for that extra $50, and is it worth the upgrade if you already own the original Polaroid Cube? That's what we are going to discuss in this video, so let's take a closer look at both of these cubed action cams and see which unit deserves your hard-earned cash. In terms of build quality, Polaroid kept the overall original Cube design and form factor. It's still extremely pocketable and compact at just 1.4 inches all the way around, and comes in a number of different bright and bold colors. It still has its grippy rubberized outer casing that makes holding the small cube in hand feel more secure. It still has its clever magnetic bottom, which I've come to appreciate even more than when I first reviewed it. The magnet is actually much stronger than I initially thought, and I've actually attached it to a number of different things to get some really cool angles, including the roof of a car while driving at about 40 miles per hour, and this thing didn't even budge. The Cube Plus, like last year's model, is weatherproof, so you don't have to worry much about filming in rainy situations or where there is moisture. That being said, you definitely don't want to submerge it into water without first sealing it in its waterproof case, which can be purchased separately on Polaroid's website for $25. While aesthetically the Polaroid Cube doesn't look much different than its first iteration, the big changes are more internal. The video recording resolution has been increased from 1080p to a slightly more crispier 1440p resolution, which now puts it on par with the more costly GoPro Session. However, keep in mind that if you choose to shoot in 1440p, the aspect ratio changes from 16:9 to 4:3, which will result in black bars appearing on the sides of your video. And this is true for whether you're shooting on GoPro or Polaroid. And for this reason, I mostly kept my resolution set to 1080p at 60 frames per second. Speaking about frame rate, there are now many more frame rate options than there were on the previous model. You're able to shoot 1440p content at 30 frames per second and 1080p content at either 30 or 60 FPS, which is super nice for capturing sharper looking video, especially when recording fast moving objects. There is also a slow motion option that captures video at 120 frames per second at 720p, which is pretty impressive being how the GoPro Session, which sells for twice the amount, reverts to a much lower WVGA resolution when shooting at 120 frames per second. Aside from really nice video quality, the Polaroid Cube now comes equipped with image stabilization, which is really nice to see, and it's a super useful feature to have on a camera, which can really help smooth out shaky video. Having this feature on all cameras should really be a standard these days, but especially on action cam devices, which are intended for active and on-the-go purposes. The image stabilization is always on by default, and it does seem to help stabilize the video to some extent. I would have loved to see them implement optical image stabilization as opposed to digital stabilization, but you really can't complain, especially since Polaroid is one of the very few manufacturers to add this feature on their action cams. GoPro, still to this date, has yet to implement image stabilization of any sort on any of their cameras, so it's really nice to see it present here on the Polaroid Cube Plus. The Cube Plus now has built-in Wi-Fi connectivity. This was one of the main features that separated last year's model from the GoPro Session. Wi-Fi connectivity, along with its new companion app, now allows you to easily transfer photos and videos taken on the Cube Plus directly to your smartphone or tablet wirelessly, where you can then easily upload them to the internet. Using the companion app is also how you will change a majority of the camera settings, such as the resolution and frame rate. Also, in the settings of the app, you are now given the ability to take timed interval photos, which is ideal for those looking to capture stunning time-lapse content. I do, however, wish there was more timed interval options, like 30 seconds or even 60-second intervals could be quite useful. Also, for some reason, the Polaroid Cube stitches the time-lapse together for you, which is kind of cool, but at the same time, I would like the option of going back and reviewing each frame and stitching it together myself in post-production. The good thing is, these adjustments could probably be added and fixed through software updates. Last year's model had a 6-megapixel shooter which took fairly unimpressive photos which were either underexposed or overexposed. They just didn't look that great. For the Cube Plus, Polaroid decided to opt for an even lower 4-megapixel shooter, but this time through software gets interpolated into an 8-megapixel image. Now, before getting anyone confused and without getting too technical, interpolation is sort of a software trickery, if you will. Think of it mostly as a photo that was enhanced in post-production. Basically, a photo taken with a 4 megapixel lens can only contain the details or pixels that the original lens had. So in other words, a 4 megapixel lens that produces an 8 megapixel interpolated image will still contain only 4 pixels of detail or sharpness. You can't add pixels from nowhere is the point I'm trying to make. So what's the point then of taking these so-called interpolated 8 megapixel photos? Well, for one, the color reproduction is much nicer on the Cube Plus and the photos it produces. Images are much more colorful and vibrant without looking cartoonish. Saturation levels are nice and the photos appear sharper. And for this reason, I actually prefer the photos taken on the Cube Plus over the original Cube, or even the GoPro Session for that matter, which I also thought took pretty dull photos. Still, the Cube Plus, in terms of its photo quality, has a lot of room for improvement, and I would really like to see a higher megapixel count on their next model. MicroSD card support has tremendously increased on the Polaroid Cube Plus, which now supports up to a whopping 128GB microSD card. And comparing it side by side to the GoPro Session, the Cube Plus now offers twice the amount of expandable storage, which is really useful when on the go and completely eliminates the worry of running out of memory. Both the original Cube and the GoPro Session had fairly impressive battery life despite their small embedded batteries. This year, Polaroid is claiming an additional 15 to 20 minutes on the Cube Plus due to its slightly larger 600 mAh battery, and it definitely does last a bit longer than its previous model. That is, however, if you have the Wi-Fi disabled. Going forward, it would be really cool if Polaroid could figure out a way to make the batteries on their Cube lineup removable. At the end of the day, the Polaroid Cube Plus offers some really nice improvements over last year's model, and for the extra $50 they're charging for the newer model, I think it's definitely worth the upgrade. Since Polaroid and GoPro are currently still the only two manufacturers producing these cube-shaped action cameras, they are constantly going to be compared, and that's not a bad thing. Competition creates lowered prices, and without competition, there would be no advancements. So with that out of the way, let me bluntly answer the question I know most people want to know and will ask. Should I get the GoPro Session or the Polaroid Cube Plus? Well, if you're in the market for this form factor, then definitely save your money and go with the Polaroid Cube Plus. The Polaroid Cube Plus is less money and yet produces great video quality, which debatably is even more colorful and sharper than the GoPro Session. In terms of features, the Polaroid Cube Plus is actually more advanced since it now supports twice the amount of expandable storage than the GoPro Session, has built-in image stabilization which the GoPro Session does not, and it also has that very unique and clever magnetic bottom, which makes attaching it to a car or any other metal magnetic objects very easy. The only real difference or upper hand, so to speak, that the GoPro Session still has over Polaroid is that the Session is waterproof without the need for a waterproof case, and whether or not that feature alone is worth spending an extra $150 is totally up to you. Just keep in mind though that the audio quality on both of these devices are subpar at best, so if audio quality is really important to you, then I would actually suggest other options, unless you're okay with recording your audio separately and then syncing it later in post-production. Going forward, what I'm really excited to see is which company is going to be the first to squeeze 4K inside the Cube form factor. That plus a better microphone and a removable battery will definitely be a win. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, since it really does help out the channel. And also in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts are on both of these action cameras, or just your thoughts in general on action cameras. Subscribe to the channel for more Techgasm content, including vlogs as well. And also check out my website, pocketabletech.com, which is up and running. Look forward to hearing from you guys, and as always, be safe, stay healthy, and I will see you guys in the next video.